Well, if we've not met yet, my name is Drew. I'm the lead pastor here at TCAT, and I heard Reggie did a really incredible job in my absence last week. So if last week was your first week and I'm here and you're like, where's the other guy? Sorry, he's the associate. He'll be back in a couple of weeks to carry another message for us. But for those of you that have been playing the TCAT long game, meaning you've been here at least as long as I have, way back in the very first year that I was here, I did a series called It's Fine. Anybody remember that? Okay, nobody. You're all new. Everyone's like, I ran everyone off in the first year that I was here. And anyway, great. This is all going to be brand new, at least for the next 30 seconds. Anyway, I did a series called It's Fine. And I talked about this idea that we as people, we say this phrase, it's fine, all the time, right? Like when someone asks us and things aren't actually fine, we still say it, right? Like we just woke up and we realized someone drained our bank account and we have a flat tire and then we were late to work and then we realized we can't buy groceries and then we realized we're in trouble with the spouse, and someone goes, hey, how's your day going? What do you say? It's fine, right? It's not fine. You're a liar. What you really mean is I do not have, go to the next slide for me, I do not have the time, energy, safety, or vocabulary to tell you what is actually going on. Now, for those of you that are just immediately thinking of Jack Nicholson's speech from A Few Good Men, I didn't realize that I did that when I wrote this, okay? If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's fine. But he says something very similar to this in a different way is the pinnacle of that movie. But I don't have the time, energy, safety, or vocabulary to tell you what's actually going on in my life right now. It's fine. Right? It's not actually fine, but I don't think you care. And if I sat here and told you what's really going on, you'd think I'm a crazy person. So I'm just going to say it's fine and move on. And we do this all the time, right? Like I'm not trying to pick a scab for any of us. I'm trying to put us all on the same field. All of us do this, Jesus follower or not, because we all have ups and we all have downs. We all have good days and bad days. And sometimes we just like, I don't even know how to start explaining to you what's actually going on. And here's something else that I know. Most of us know the exhausting difference between looking okay and being okay. Because not only can we say it's fine, we can actually make people believe it, right? They don't know the dumpster fire we walked out of before we answered that question. They don't know the thing that's actually happening. And in fact, I would venture a guess that if I've ran into you in the hallway here, some of you all have told me it's fine, and you knew that it wasn't. And either you didn't want to tell me because I'm a pastor, I don't know, or you're just like, again, I don't have the time to explain what's actually happening. We know the exhausting difference between looking okay and being okay. We know what it's like, and we can walk this road so easily that we've become really comfortable at it. We've become really comfortable at masking what's actually happening beneath the surface and making everyone feel like we look the part. Now, let me say the hard thing. Now, Jesus said this first, okay? I didn't come up with this. This is Jesus. If you don't like it, take it up with him. But here's the hard thing. That means that you can be a Christian and not follow in the way of Jesus. You understand this? So what it actually means is you can look the part, and you can talk the part, and you can act the part, and you can sing the songs, and you can know the things, but actually not follow the way of Jesus. And this is such a common thing in our country right now. In fact, I would venture a guess that in a room like this, some of you have actually been hurt by people who call themselves Christians, who you were like, well, wait a minute, everything I know about Jesus doesn't seem to think you can be this way towards me or act this way towards me or say this thing towards me. So wait a minute, how are you a Jesus follower? Wait, you weren't, right? You didn't know they might not have, but you formed every conclusion you've ever formed about the church or Christians or Jesus followers or whatever based on that one experience with someone who looked like a Christian but wasn't actually following the way of Jesus. Now, here's the good news. This is not one of those sermons where you're going to walk out of here feeling awful, okay? I don't do it. It's Father's Day. Dads always feel like we do that to them. We don't. It's not happening today. This is the hard part right now. It's only going to go up from here. But you need to understand this. You can actually be convinced of something and not committed to it. You can be convinced that something's true and real, but not actually be committed to following what would actually lead your life in a particular direction. It's the same thing we do when we say it's fine, right? Look, it's not fine. I understand most of this, and it's probably going to work out, but I just don't have the time to explain to you what's really happening beneath the surface. And if we can own really fast, if we can just own the fact that we're really good at putting something on the outside that doesn't necessarily match what's on the inside, then everything Jesus has to say for you today will feel like nothing but hope. Now hold that thought. We are in a series called Summer on the Mount, and this is week 3. If you're brand new with us today, you can pick up on all of these on our YouTube channel or on our website as well, and we're going to kind of do a quick recap. But the big idea behind this entire series is we're talking about life. right? We're talking about life in general. And what kind of life is actually worth wanting? What kind of life is actually worth wanting? Because all of us are seeking something. You've got a parameter for the way you look at your life. You got a set of standards. You're like, this is what good life is, and this is what I'm going to seek it out. So what kind of life is actually worth wanting? And who gets to say what good life is? Right? Who gets to define that for you? And what we talked about really in week 1 was this idea that like many of us are seeking the good life, but we're not the ones that set that definition. Other people did, right? Or culture did, or our parents did, or our professors did, or those people that we didn't really even like in the first place did, or a set of friends did. Like, who gets to actually define what good life is? And do we like who said it for us to begin with? Now, I want to give you a verse that has become this definition for me. And the reason that I trust the person that I've decided to trust with the answer to this question actually comes from the Gospel of John. If you're following along your message notes, I didn't list the one on the message notes. We're going to get to Matthew 5 in just a minute. But in John chapter 10, Jesus says one of the most incredible, amazing, powerful things I think he ever said. Listen to this. I have come that they may have life. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Now you think of everything that Jesus did, even if you don't believe him, okay, think about the stories in the Gospels, the healings and the teachings and the fact that he died. He went to his own death. Even if you don't believe that he was resurrected yet, he went to his own death, and he said that was for you, right? He said that. Those were his words. That was his motivation. I have come that they may have life. So that means that everything that Jesus did was just so you and I would have life, and not just any kind of life, that we would have it to the full. Now you tell me this. Who else have you met in your entire life that said everything that I do, the way that I live and I breathe and everything else is just that you might have life and have it to the full? Probably not very many people. And so to me personally, and I feel like if I'm going to find someone who's going to define what actually good life is, if someone's going to sit down and say this is the way the good life works, I'm going to go with this guy who wants me to have it to the full. Right? I'm going to go with this guy because he says I want you to have life and I want you to have lots and lots and lots of it. And the thing is, this is what was so beautiful. When when he died and was resurrected and went, ascended back to heaven, when his followers took over, okay? When the followers took over and started planting the church, one of the things they called themselves the way. They called themselves the way of Jesus. And here's why. Because they said they were following a whole way of life. It was a whole way of life. And this word whole is so important because it's not just bits and pieces of a life. Okay, it's a whole life. It is a full life. It is one that is put back together again. And I don't know about you, but I've experienced so many times in my life where the broken pieces just didn't seem to want to mesh. Where something happened to me, or I went through something, or someone hurt me in a way that I just didn't think I could ever come back from, and I'm looking at shattered pieces. And then Jesus comes along and says, I want you to have a whole way of life. I want you to have a whole life. I want you to have a life that is completely full. So to me, okay, my bias on the table, when someone says who gets to define what good life is, I say Jesus. And if you don't answer that yet, that's okay. But what we're doing in this series is we're talking about what his version of life looks like and how it leads to this whole life that he has promised. Okay, so even if you haven't made a decision to follow him yet, maybe, just maybe, the evidence that you find in this series this summer, what we're trying to do is point you in the direction of the life that he wants for you, and you can make that choice on your own. Now, one more caveat, and then I'll shut up and move on, okay? For some of us, we grew up steeped in the culture, right? We grew up steeped in the church. We grew up steeped in the way that church is supposed to be. We knew we were supposed to show up on Sunday and maybe Sunday night. And if you're a really good Christian, you showed up on Wednesday nights and you got the gold stars on the wall, right? I had lots of Sunday school gold stars. I was that kid. And we knew how to do all the things. I knew when to stand and when to sit down. I knew what to read and what to say and what not to say. I knew what words were out of bounds. But I didn't know anything about following Jesus. I just knew what it looked like to be a Christian. There's a difference. And I hope that that's not a wake-up call that you weren't expecting today, but there's a difference between knowing Jesus and following Jesus, and it's an important one. And I hope that you see that in the midst of what we're talking about today. Now, in week 1, we were building this kind of life. Okay, Jesus, at the very end of the Sermon on the Mount, which is his most famous teaching, he talks about the wise man is the one who puts these words into practice, okay? Like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And so we're talking about what it looks for us to build our life as a house that's built on a firm foundation. In week 1, we talked about desire, okay? How the things that we long for inside are important, and Jesus wants to speak about those things. He gave us a very clear lens. And then last week, Reggie did such a beautiful job of talking about identity. I watched this from Alaska. He did such a phenomenal job. I'm really proud of the way that he laid out salt and light as this really important part of who we're supposed to be as Jesus followers. And you can't really go any further until you understand that's supposed to be our character. So today, I want to talk about step number 3, which is your heart. Jesus did this incredibly, sometimes scary thing where he looked past our behavior and went right into our hearts. He looked past the facade. He looked past us saying it's fine. He looked past us saying everything's good. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. He went past all of that and peered right down into people's hearts. And when we read it, we love it, right? I mean, especially if you love a good religious story. If you open up the Bible and you read about Jesus when he confronts the Samaritan woman at the well, and she's talking about wanting water, and he says, "Bring me your husband," right? And we're like, ooh, right? You read this, great. But when he does it to you, it's scary, right? When he looks into your life and goes, "Hey, listen, let's talk about what's actually going on," it's kind of scary. But Jesus doesn't sugarcoat that, and there's a very specific reason that he's doing that, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. But here's the section. This is in Matthew chapter 5. I'm going to start reading in verse 17. This is the section of Jesus' most famous teaching about where he talks about why he does that. So here's how it starts. "Do not think," this is a strange place to start, but hear me out, okay? "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." Now, there was a group of people, law keepers and Sadducees and like really religious people, who were convinced that Jesus was some sort of weird heretic because when he walked around, he didn't act like them. He didn't look like them, and he would rather hang out with sinners than with them. Right? He would rather hang out with the people who society had marginalized than the people that were supposed to be running the thing. He didn't seek out the powerful, he sought out the broken. He didn't seek out the ones who were already put together, he sought out the ones who were broken, hot dumpster fire messes, right? I don't know if you can relate, but I sure can. That's who Jesus wanted to hang out with, and it drove him crazy. And so they started these rumors that he's just clearly trying to destroy the law. He's a heretic. And he goes, no. I didn't come to destroy anything. I came to fulfill it. And the word fulfill is really important because it says complete, okay? It really means complete. I have come to complete this. I've come to put it to bed. I've come to be the full measure of what the law was actually supposed to be. And in fact, again, we just did communion earlier today. When Jesus established his new covenant, it was a new covenant built on the old one, but it was a new covenant because he said, we've completed this, the whole point of this. Now we've stepped into this way, the truth, and the life, being Jesus and Jesus alone. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything, I love this, is accomplished. Until everything is finished. Now, for those of you that played the Sunday school game when you were younger, what does the word finished sound a lot like? Sounds like what he said from the cross, right? And so Jesus is saying, look, none of this is going to go away, okay, until everything is finished, until everything is accomplished. This law is the law. It's not going away. This new covenant is coming in, but it's built on the old one. So don't think I've come to destroy it. I've come to show you the point of it. And so we have this temptation, okay, and I'm speaking to those of us that are religious people in the room for a minute. We have this temptation to kind of find loopholes in what Jesus said, okay, or find loopholes in what the rules are, the morality is. And Jesus is like, no, the moral code doesn't go away. You just have misunderstood it. You've stepped aside from it. You've made it something that was never supposed to be. And it's not going away because everything that I'm about to do to finish this thing is built upon it. So don't miss that. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Now, we don't like that kind of language, but he gives us the good news. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven, okay? So again, he's just kind of laying the foundation. Look, God cares what you do deeply. He cares about your behavior. He cares about it more than you think that he does. It's far more important than you think that it is. But, Jesus is about to say, but there's something that's a little bit more important underneath of what you do. Because we, as religious people, so many times have found ways to follow the letter of the law without following the point of the law. Follow the letter of the rule without following the point of the rule. We navigate and kind of wiggle and adjust and smudge. And Jesus is like, we got to stop doing that. That's crazy because you don't get it. So then he says, for For I tell you that unless your righteousness, this is crazy, your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees, they were supposed to be the religious people. They were supposed to be the most righteous people in the land. Unless your righteousness is more than that, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. That's a, whoa, what? Unless you can do better than what these religious people are doing, you're not going to make it. And boy, let me tell you, the Pharisees did not like it when Jesus said this. They were not happy about this at all. And maybe this rubs you the wrong way too. Okay, if it does, hear me out. Okay, again, if you don't like it, take it up with Jesus. He said it, not me. I'm just reading his words. But more than that, why would Jesus say this? Right? Why would Jesus shake things up like this in the middle of his most important teaching? Why would he throw the religious people under the bus? Well, because they were building their life on something that didn't matter. They were building their life on rules and the religion, and they were building it on the cult, and they were building it on their power. They were building it on being in charge. They were building it on their interpretation of God. And Jesus said, you've got all this wrong. You don't get it. You don't understand. And so he comes in and says, the righteousness they think they're mustering up by doing these things is not actual righteousness, because on the outside they look one way and on the inside they look a completely different one. So, spoiler alert. Jesus is deeply concerned about what's going on in your heart. And he peered into the heart of the Pharisees and found them wanting. And just like Paul said in Romans 6, which I read earlier today, Jesus is just simply asking the question, why do you want to do that? Why is that the life that you want? Why do you want to look one way and feel another way? Why do you want to act a way and feel another? Why do you want to pretend to be something that you don't actually like, and on the inside you're dying and you're still captive and you're still chained? Why do you want that? That's all Jesus is asking. Now, he does it in this really, it bothers us, okay? But he does it in this really incredible way. Over the next, 30 verses or so, he does all of these comparisons. And he takes rules that they had heard in the day, and he basically cranks them up to 11, okay? So he says, he starts by saying something like, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago. This is verse 21. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago. And so he's referring to the law. And then he says, but I say to you, and what he would do is he would take something, like an example of one of their rules, and he would just make it so much more difficult. Let me give you an example. The first one he starts with is he talks about anger beneath murder. He says, you have heard that it was said long ago that thou shalt not kill. But I say to you, if you hold anger in your heart towards your brother or sister, you have already, he's basically saying it's the same thing. If you hold anger towards someone, and he gives all these incredible graphic examples of how this happens in our lives. If you're holding anger towards someone, then you have done the same thing. That the anger underneath the murder was the point. Now, hear me, Jesus is not saying that murder is okay. He's actually saying it's the stuff that was underneath of it that made it the problem. To which we go, oh my gosh, so you're saying that I've ever been angry at someone? Jesus said that's the same thing as murder. That seems pretty steep. Yeah, right? Right, do you feel doomed yet? It gets better. It gets better, worse, whatever you want to say. Jesus takes he takes all the righteousness that they put together and he starts to crank it up to 11. He takes them and turns the dial as far as they'll go. Here's another one. This one bothers many of us. Lust beneath adultery. He said, you have heard that it was said that you shouldn't commit adultery. But I say, if you ever look at a woman with eyes, right, that you should not be looking at her with, then you have already committed adultery with her in your heart. To which the people in the room go, oh my gosh, right? Ugh, you got to be kidding me. If you ever look at a person with lust in your eyes, that is the same thing as committing adultery. Jesus says, he takes the dial and he cranks it way up. Feeling doomed yet? It gets better. He talks about disposability beneath divorce. See, in Jesus' day, and listen, honestly, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, okay? I love everyone that's in this room, and I'm not judging your story. If I've been where you were, I may feel the exact same way that you do, okay? But in Jesus' day, divorce was a very simple thing. And in fact, it just happened for the most random of reasons. Someone would go, I don't really like this person anymore. I'm going to find a different one. And they were just disposable. People just became disposable. Relationships became disposable, and covenant became disposable, and marriage became disposable. And so he points this out, and he says, look, you think that there's a rule that makes this okay. It's actually not. What you're doing is you're saying that people are less worthy of love than you are. And it's not okay. And he says you should take more seriously the covenant that you have made. You should take more seriously the covenant that you have made. Feeling doomed yet? It gets better. Deception beneath oaths. He talks about people who make these oaths, and you've heard it say, don't make oaths, don't make promises you can't keep, all those kind of things. Underneath of that, he said, listen, the reason we don't want you to do that is because you use this as a deception. You use this as a way to get your way. You use this as a way to get away with something. It's a way for you to kind of find a contract and then build a loophole into it. And he says, you've got to stop doing that. Your word should be your bond. What you say and is who you are, and what you say is what you do. And people are like, oh my gosh, well, this is just how business works, Jesus. This is just how life works, Jesus. This is just how the world is. This is what we do. This is how we act. This is how the world, if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. And Jesus takes the dial and cranks it all the way up to 11. What about this one? This one's another tough one. Revenge beneath retaliation. Revenge beneath retaliation. I don't know about you, but I love movies. I'm like a huge movie nerd. I think some of y'all know this. My very first big boy job was working in a video store. They don't even have those anymore for those of you that are under the age of 20. But I worked at a Hollywood video, and I rented DVDs to people. And one of the greatest things that nearly bankrupted me was I got a big discount on DVDs. And I don't know how many movies I watched in that series of time, but it was a lot. And it feels like a lot of times the movies we like the most are the ones where the hero gets to, they get their the villain gets their comeuppance from the hero, right? Y'all ever seen the movie Gladiator? Right, one of my favorite movies. Don't clap; it's okay. It's weird. But Gladiator, right? It's great. It's fantastic, and we only love that movie because the villain. I'm spoiling a movie from 25 years ago, but the villain gets defeated by the hero who gets his revenge. Right? It's fantastic and it's amazing. And what we don't want to talk about is that in reality, the best case scenario. Here's the hard thing. What Jesus says to a story like that, the absolute best case scenario in that is actually that the villain repents and that their relationship is reconciled and they all live happily ever after. And we're all like, I don't like that story. That sounds boring, right? Like I don't want to do that, right? But so we talk about retaliation. Well, look, this is what they did. This happens in my house all the time. I don't want to throw my girls under the bus, but this is just how it is. I hear this phrase so much. Well, I didn't want to hit her, but she hit me first, right? I didn't want to take her makeup, but she took my iPad or whatever. Like, I didn't want to do it, but I had to because this is just how it works. It's the law of the eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth in our house. And I didn't want to, but I didn't have a choice. And so, again, we call that retaliation, but Jesus calls that revenge. He calls it revenge, and he said, this is not okay. This isn't how we treat each other. Again, cranking that dial way up to 11. Because by this point, if you haven't, I'm not done, unfortunately. You all wish that I was, but I'm not. It gets worse. By this point, everybody in the crowd's going, oh my goodness, how am I supposed to live like this? And how is this, again, hopefully you're asking this question by now, how is this supposed to make my life feel good? Because I'm looking around and there's some people that need some revenge, and I'm one of them, right? Another one, this one's really tough, hatred beneath selective love. He talks a lot about loving your neighbors. And he goes like, look, it's easy to love people who already love you back. It's much harder to love your enemies. And so I say to you, love your enemies. And people are like, first of all, Jesus actually acknowledges that we have enemies. How shocking is that, right? That he actually lays out the reality that there are people who don't have our best interests in mind. And then he goes, hey, by the way, you should love those people. A quick raise of hands of those of you that are so excited to love people who don't have your best interest in mind. Yeah, right? Exactly. Because this isn't how the world actually works. But what he says is you've actually decided that some people are worthy of love and some people are not. And the hardest lesson I've had to learn, and I hate thinking about this, but it's true. I'm actually the villain in somebody's story. And I hate to burst your bubble, but you probably are too. Right? To somebody, you're the enemy. To somebody, I'm the enemy. And look, we all think we're perfect and we're all, we'll get along. But Jesus is just pointing out the reality that God says everyone is deserving of love. And we don't get to pick and choose who that love actually goes to. And if we want to take it serious, then we should love everyone, especially the people who don't love us back. Cranking the dial up and up and up. What about this one? Okay. What is Jesus' actual goal of saying this? Why would he do this? Well, the goal is to become whole, he says. In summary, If you want the whole life, these are the behaviors that you should live into. And we're like, wow, whoa, wait a minute. Time out. Jesus, have you lived in this world? Have you met people? Because people stink, right? And I don't know if you've met them, but I have. And if you spent 10 minutes with the people that I've spent 10 minutes with, you would be changing some of your Sermon on the Mount, right? And this was the pushback that Jesus got. And Jesus does not back down. Like, look, if you want this life that I want to give you, if you really want to step into this kingdom life, this whole life, if you want life to the full, this is the goal of the things that I've just laid out. Now, again, don't miss this, okay? Jesus consistently pointed at a behavior, right? Here's a behavior, and then he went underneath of it to the motivation. He took the behavior, which was the surface level of measuring things, and he goes, I want to talk about what's happening inside of you. Why would he do that? Why is it not enough for me to just do the thing? I'm a guy, which means that I like check boxes and simple lists. And so I like, ladies, you don't know this about us, or if you will if you get married. But you need to know this up front. Like, we just want you to tell us what to do. Just tell us what to do, right? We don't know what to do. We don't want to tell you. We don't know what to do, but we don't. And just tell us what to do, right? And so we look at Jesus. Jesus, just give me the list. Give me the list and I'll check it off. And Jesus said, it's not enough, okay? It's not enough to just know the right thing. You have to understand what's happening underneath. And here's why. Jesus loves you too much to leave you clean on the outside and captive on the inside. Jesus loves you and me way too much to leave us looking good on the outside and a hot mess on the inside. He loves us too much to allow us to say it's fine when nothing is fine. He loves us way too much to allow us to continue to be broken and messy and captive and chained on the inside when we look free on the outside. And every time we gloss over something on the inside of us, every time we just say, it'll work, it'll be fine, it's not a big deal. Every time we take that pain and we shove it back down, or every time we take that motivation we know is not good for us, we just keep shoving it back down, right, whatever, we are staying captive to something that Jesus said you could be free from, that I could be free from. So let's own this before we go any further. Jesus' way of doing life is less complicated, but it's more demanding. Because there's no set of rules anymore, right? I mean, well, there is, but it's much simpler. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. Love your neighbor as yourself. This was Jesus' greatest command in part 1 and part 2. That was what he said. Love neighbor, love God. Simple, okay? Less complicated. Way more demanding. Way more demanding. Why do this? Why live this way? Well, because it's the promise of the new life. And look, hear me, okay? There needs to be another line underneath of this that says, worth it. Worth it. Less complicated, more demanding, worth it. Because when you finally experience the freedom of being set free from the junk that's on the inside, and it's not about maintaining an image anymore. It's not about looking good or acting a part anymore. When it's finally like people see you and the you that they see is actually one that's been transformed by Jesus, you have no idea how freeing that is until you've lived it. Until you can go like, brokenness, warts and all, here I have come to Jesus and he has accepted me. Because here's the thing, this is the beautiful thing. When Jesus had got done cranking up the dial to 11 on everything, and everyone in the audience felt doomed, what did he do? He died for the doomed people. He died for the broken people. He died for the messy people. He died for the, messed up stories and the broken, junky stuff that had happened to people. He died for the people that had gone through terrible experiences. He died for the people that would make terrible choices. He died for the people that had done everything he said not to do. He died for them so that they would have this whole new life. And every time we try to manage some of that rather than just giving it to Jesus, we're just basically saying, I want to hold on to the old life even though you want to give me a better one. I want to hold on to the junk, right? And Paul and Jesus are just saying, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to do that? Here's the call to action, okay? Here's the one thing. If you didn't get anything else out of this message today, if you're still wrestling with what to do or what Jesus would say, just Stop trying to manage what Jesus came to transform. Stop trying to manage and hold on to and keep together and hide and cover over. Stop trying to manage what Jesus came to transform. He wants to set you free. Why do you do that to yourself? Stop trying to hold together what Jesus says, I can fix this for you. I have life for you. I have life to the full for you. I have freedom for you. I have hope for you. I have joy for you. And you keep holding on to stuff that's killing you. Stop it. You can have it. You can. It's yours. The only thing holding you back from it is you. You just have to say yes. Jesus, you win. I don't want to hold this stuff anymore. I don't want to feel this way anymore. I don't want to act this way anymore. I don't want to hurt this way anymore. I don't want this. You win. I'm not going to cover it up. I'm not going to say that it's fine. I'm not going to hold it underneath. I'm not going to keep these motivations knowing that they're killing me and the people that are around me. I'm not going to hold on to this addiction. I'm not going to hold on to this bad relationship. I'm not going to hold on to this sin, this thing that I know is killing me and killing our relationship and the people around me. I'm not doing it anymore. You win. Transform it, change it, fix it. I'm not going to manage anymore what you have already offered to transform. I'm not going to hold on to anymore what you've already died for. Because I can't muster up enough righteousness to look good before you anyway, so you win. That's the hope of Matthew chapter 5. And it sounds awful when you read through Matthew chapter 5, doesn't it? It makes you feel like, oh my gosh, what on earth am I going to do with all of this stuff? But then remember, the whole point of it is that Jesus wants you to have life. So take it. Here's a couple of discussion questions to help you get through this over the next couple of days. Number one, where do you most often feel the gap between looking okay and actually being okay? Number two, what would it look like this week to stop managing what Jesus wants to transform? And number three, is there a conversation, confession, boundary, act of forgiveness, or step of surrender that Jesus may be inviting you into? I'd love to pray for you as you sort this out. Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, thank you for these people that are gathered here today. Thank you for the fathers, the spiritual fathers, the actual fathers, the fathers who stepped up when no one else would. We're just so grateful for the men of our church and who they represent to us and who they represent to you. God, we pray for your blessings on the rest of our weekends, this weekend, and on this word. God, would you just help us to trust you with the life that you've given us? Would you just help us to say yes to you in a way that maybe we haven't before, because you have life and have it to the full. God, we love you and we trust you and we ask it in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, amen. Thank you for coming to TCAT this weekend. Happy Father's Day. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the photo booth outside. Grab some sweets on the way out the door, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.